Hello, and thank you for coming back. In the previous section, we talked what advocacy is and how to develop your personal advocacy plan. In this section, we begin the first of our digital advocacy activities, and that is reading and sharing news. To begin, it is important that we understand the social media environment when it comes to news. Now, Facebook and YouTube are the largest social networking sites for news consumption. 30% of Americans regularly read news on Facebook, where 10% of Americans regularly watch news on YouTube. However, the majority of Americans more casually engage with news consumption on social media. About half of Americans have shared an article on Facebook before. However, we are interested in an interesting group, 18%, who primarily get their news from social media. Now, a worrying trend is emerging among this group, as they tend to be less informed and less engaged when compared to Americans who get their news from a different media outlet. Now, part of this is due to the prevalence of misinformation on social media. Americans tend not to trust the news they see online. And so when we are sharing news, we need to make sure that we are sharing trustworthy sources. And for that, we need media literacy. Now, media literacy is the ability to analyze and evaluate information and to identify misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation. Now, misinformation was not created or shared with the intention of causing harm. It was simply a misunderstanding. However, malinformation is based on fact, but it was taken out of context to mislead somebody. And disinformation was deliberately created to mislead people. Fortunately, the Department of Homeland Security has created a list of media literacy skills to help us when we're sharing articles. The first is to identify the source. We want to make sure that this is a reputable news organization. Next, we need to triple check the source. Is this source who they claim they are, or are they mimicking a more trusted outlet? We then need to inspect the URL. If this news organization is mimicking somebody, then the URL will look similar to a different news organization, but there will be some irregularities. Your next step is to identify the author. Is there an author listed? And if so, what is their reputation? Are they known for factual reporting? We then want to examine the grammar. Are there excessive spelling or punctuation mistakes? If so, that can be a red flag that this article is not to be trusted. Seek alternative viewpoints. What are other trusted outlets saying about this issue? Fact-check the claims. Are they true? And finally, we want to think before we share. Disinformation thrives on people reading a provocative headline and then sharing without reading the article. However, we want to make sure that we are sharing trustworthy information, and that requires that we read this article. As we end this section, here's a checklist to help you when you're sharing news. You first need to find an article. You can do this by Googling your subject, or browsing social media, or looking at a news app that you trust. You then want to use your media literacy skills on this article to see if it's worth sharing. You will then share it on your social media site of choice. And finally, share the article with friends and family, as it has been shown that when you get an article from somebody that you know, you're more likely to actually read it. Your next step is to return to your personal advocacy plan. In this section, you're going to identify an article related to your social cause, and then use your media literacy skills to determine if it is worth sharing. Congratulations on completing another step in your advocacy journey. In this section, we discussed the social media environment when it comes to news consumption. We've also discussed media literacy skills for sharing articles. And we've gone over a checklist to help you when you're sharing those articles. In the next section, we're going to cover the next of our digital advocacy activities, and that is emailing your elected officials.